and he's probably spent more time thinking about it. For the rest of us, it's more a question of, okay, we have to shift the way we support.
The royal family has always depended on tradition to survive. Every detail, from the way members speak to where they sit, follows rules built over centuries. But something unusual happened behind palace walls that many believe has crossed a line. It was a moment so disrespectful, it left Queen Camilla visibly insulted. Now, people are asking, what caused this tension between Anne and Queen Camilla, and why did it explode so publicly? Join us as we uncover how a breach in royal protocol led to a humiliation so sharp it made Camilla completely lose it. A curtsy ignored. It was supposed to be a united front. At the Commonwealth Day service at Westminster Abbey, the royal family gathered to present strength and stability. Cameras were everywhere. The public was watching closely. This was one of the few moments where every movement, every smile, and every glance mattered. Sophie, Duchess of Edinburgh, stepped forward first. She greeted Queen Camilla warmly. Then she did exactly what was expected. She gave a small kiss on the cheek, then lowered herself into a respectful curtsy. That's what royal protocol calls for when meeting someone with the title of Majesty. It was polite, it was proper, and it followed the rules. But Princess Anne wasn't going to follow anyone's lead. When it was her turn, she walked up with her usual confidence. She leaned in to give Camilla the kiss on the cheek, but then she paused. There was no curtsy. She looked at Camilla, nodded slightly, and moved on. That small moment landed like thunder. You will want to keep watching, because this is deeper than you think. To the public, it didn't feel like an accident. It didn't feel like she forgot. It felt deliberate. Royal watchers immediately started talking. People who know how these traditions work were shocked. Anne had just walked past royal protocol. More than that, it looked like she had walked past Camilla's authority. This wasn't the first time either. Even after Camilla rose in rank and was officially crowned queen, Anne had avoided curtsying to her. Again and again, she showed that she wasn't willing to bend in that way. Some say it's her way of standing firm on her beliefs. Others say it's quiet rebellion. But this moment at Westminster was different. It happened in public. It happened on one of the most symbolic royal days of the year. And it happened with cameras rolling. That single moment at Westminster didn't just spark whispers. It opened the lid on something much deeper. People weren't just reacting to the missed curtsy. They were reacting to the long, silent wall that seems to stand between Princess Anne and Queen Camilla. Even more telling is that the quiet resistance may not stop with Anne. There are reports that Anne's daughter, Zara Tindall, has also refused to curtsy to Queen Camilla. While Zara holds no royal title herself, she was born into the heart of the monarchy and raised with a deep understanding of royal customs. A curtsy from her would still carry weight, but just like her mother, she seems to draw a line. Some royal observers say this isn't a mistake or a slip. It's a silent reflection of Anne's influence, a way of showing that certain values, especially around loyalty and respect, matter more than royal rank or public image. And that message, passed from mother to daughter, speaks volumes. Now you have to look at these two women to understand why that public moment felt so sharp. Princess Anne and Queen Camilla have never moved through royal life the same way. As Camilla once remarked in an interview about her relationship with Anne, "We are always going in different directions, like ships that pass in the night, really." That difference runs right to the core of who they are. Princess Anne has always been the kind of royal who works, not one who performs. She's often been called the hardest working member of the royal family. She keeps a tight schedule, often carrying out hundreds of engagements a year, yet she does it with little fuss. She rarely seeks attention. She doesn't give much away. Her focus has always been duty first. She's someone who values order, tradition, and discipline. You can see it in the way she dresses, the way she walks, even in the way she speaks. No frills, no drama, and no need for applause. Camilla, by contrast, entered the royal family from the side. She wasn't born into it. She didn't grow up with the same rules pressed into her daily life. Her journey has been anything but straightforward. For many years, she was known only as the woman at the center of a royal scandal. Her affair with Prince Charles cast a shadow that followed her everywhere. Public opinion was unforgiving for a long time. It took years before her image softened, and even longer before she gained real acceptance. But even now, that acceptance has limits, especially when it comes to people like Princess Anne. Those close to the palace say that Anne has always been careful about who she shows warmth to. And with Camilla, that warmth never seemed to appear. Some believe it's because of Anne's loyalty to her mother, Queen Elizabeth II. The late Queen was a symbol of moral clarity for Anne. She held herself to the highest standards of service, and for Anne, anyone stepping into a high royal position had to live up to that same standard. Camilla's path didn't follow that kind of clean line. That may be one reason why Anne continues to keep her distance. There's also a strong sense that Anne simply doesn't play into the softer, more accessible version of royalty that Camilla represents. While Camilla has leaned into her role as a supportive queen with a smile and relaxed charm, Anne has stayed firm in her own approach, measured, focused, and private. She doesn't do charm offensives. She doesn't ask for public sympathy. She shows up, gets the job done, and leaves. It's a style that doesn't always match with Camilla's way of doing things. That difference in how they carry themselves often shows up when they appear together. The tension is never loud, but it's there in how close they stand, in how they speak, and in what they choose not to say. Some royal experts have pointed out that Anne's position as the only daughter of the late Queen Elizabeth II carries a certain weight. She sees herself as someone who guards the crown's dignity. That includes protecting it from what she might see as shortcuts or exceptions. Camilla's fast rise to queen, especially given her history, may have been one of those exceptions Anne never fully supported. And when you look back at that moment in Westminster Abbey, when Anne walked past Camilla without a curtsy, it suddenly feels much larger. It wasn't just one missed gesture, it was everything unsaid between them showing up in one quiet act. But there's still more to this. Keep watching. Royal secrets. Long before Camilla became queen, tensions between her and Princess Anne were already growing. The royal family is known for keeping personal conflicts behind closed doors, but even they couldn't keep this one entirely hidden. People noticed the coolness early on, and over time that chill seemed to settle into something more permanent. Camilla officially married Charles in 2005, but her presence was felt long before that. She had been a fixture in his life for years, and that created an uncomfortable atmosphere, especially for those within the family who were loyal to Princess Diana. Anne was one of them. Although Anne and Diana were very different in personality and approach, they shared a quiet bond. Both women understood what it meant to walk into the royal family and face constant pressure. Diana may have been more emotional and public in her struggles, while Anne was more guarded and controlled. Diana, for example, wore her heart on her sleeve. She gave emotional interviews like the famous 1995 BBC Panorama One, where she openly discussed her struggles with depression, bulimia, and her fractured marriage.
Do you think Mrs. Parker Bowles was a factor in the breakdown of your marriage?
Well, there were 3 of us in this marriage, so it was a bit crowded.
She connected deeply with the public through raw honesty and visible vulnerability, which made her both relatable and beloved. Anne, on the other hand, rarely gives interviews and often avoids emotional displays in public. Her reaction to personal challenges, like her 1992 divorce from Captain Mark Phillips, was handled quietly and without the media drama that surrounded Diana. Still, Anne respected Diana's place, and according to several insiders, she believed that position deserved to be honored, even after Diana's death. That's why some say Anne never quite accepted Camilla. It wasn't just about the past. It was about principle. Camilla stepping into the royal spotlight, especially after everything that had happened, felt wrong to Anne. She saw it as a betrayal of values that mattered deeply to her: loyalty, integrity, and the importance of doing things the right way, no matter how long it took. There were even moments during royal family gatherings where Camilla's presence seemed to create discomfort. One royal insider once shared that during one such event in the early 2000s, Anne kept her conversations brief when Camilla was nearby. It wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic, but she didn't go out of her way to make Camilla feel included. She kept her distance, and that distance was not just emotional. It showed in protocol too. Anne, from the beginning, appeared reluctant to engage in any overly warm public gestures towards Camilla. While other royals slowly adapted and began to acknowledge Camilla's role, Anne remained firm. Her body language, the lack of warmth in her expressions, even her seating choices during events, all gave the sense of a woman drawing a line that she refused to cross. Some observers believe Anne's coldness came from more than just personal disapproval. It also came from her understanding of the monarchy's reputation. Anne has always been deeply protective of the crown. For her, every action matters. Every handshake, every smile, every nod carries weight. In her eyes, accepting Camilla without question might have sent the wrong message not just to the family, but to the public too. That belief seems to have influenced how she raised her children as well. Zara and Peter were brought up to value privacy and straightforward behavior. And it's no surprise that Zara, in particular, reflects that same resistance and the same refusal to play along if something doesn't feel right. What makes this all the more interesting is that Anne never spoke about it publicly. She never gave interviews or dropped hints. She didn't need to. Her actions were enough. The way she moved, the choices she made, and the energy she gave off. When Camilla was around, all spoke louder than any words ever could. And for those watching closely, this tension didn't begin with a missed curtsy or an awkward smile. It had been there all along, quietly shaping the way these two women moved around each other. To complicate their relationship even further is something many people forget, or perhaps choose not to talk about openly. Before Camilla ever married King Charles, and long before she became queen, her first husband, Andrew Parker Bowles, was romantically linked to none other than Princess Anne herself. The connection goes back to the late 1960s and early 1970s. At the time, Andrew was a young, dashing officer in the British Army and a familiar face in royal circles. He was charming, socially connected, and came from the kind of background that made him a welcome guest at palace events. Anne, who was still carving out her place in the royal family, reportedly enjoyed his company. They shared a love of horses and had overlapping friends within the polo scene, which was, and still is, a close part of upper-class British life. Although their relationship was never officially confirmed by the palace, it was widely acknowledged in elite social circles. Several biographers have noted that Anne and Andrew's relationship was real, even if it was never destined to become permanent. The biggest obstacle was always his religion. Andrew was Catholic, and at the time, royal protocol prevented Anne from marrying someone of that faith without giving up her place in the line of succession. That barrier made things complicated, and as history shows, Anne eventually moved on. But the story didn't end there. Camilla married Andrew in 1973, just a few years after his reported romance with Anne fizzled out. It's not clear how Anne truly felt about that marriage. But for some, the situation already planted a seed of discomfort. The royal social world is small, and relationships, both romantic and platonic, have a way of overlapping. Now, fast forward decades later, and Camilla isn't just Andrew's ex-wife, she's the queen, and Anne has to walk behind the very woman who once married the man she was linked to. There's been no much comments from either Anne or Camilla on this chapter of their shared history, but that hasn't stopped royal watchers from raising questions. Could there be unspoken tension left over from those early years? Was Anne ever bothered by the fact that Camilla married a man she once dated, or did she simply find the situation awkward? One former royal aide once hinted that Anne had little patience for social games. She liked things to be direct and structured. In that light, having to constantly interact with someone like Camilla, who came from a more relaxed, informal, social approach, might have rubbed Anne the wrong way. And when that person also has personal history tied to Anne's own past, it's easy to see why tension may have continued. Some royal biographers have even speculated that part of Anne's coolness toward Camilla isn't just about Diana or duty. It may also stem from these older, more personal chapters. To the public, it might just seem like old gossip. But in a world where every glance, every greeting, and every gesture is dissected, such unresolved history can become impossible to ignore. And while both women have kept things civil, those old ties may quietly inform every cold exchange and missed curtsy to this day. When Queen Elizabeth II passed away in September 2022, the monarchy didn't just lose its longest reigning sovereign, it also faced a massive shift in internal power and visibility. King Charles ascended the throne, and with him came the formal rise of Camilla, who was no longer just the Duchess of Cornwall. She was now Queen. But behind the scenes, many believed this transition caused tensions in the royal family, specifically with Princess Anne. Anne had always been a pillar of consistency during her mother's reign, so when Camilla's title was elevated from Queen Consort to simply Queen, it reportedly didn't sit well with Anne. According to royal insiders, Anne preferred a more traditional approach. In her eyes, Queen Elizabeth had earned her title through decades of service and sacrifice. Camilla, on the other hand, had joined the firm relatively late and under complicated circumstances, especially considering her history with Diana and Charles. The shift in title, from Queen Consort to just Queen, was seen by some as too bold, too soon. At the time of the Queen's passing, Buckingham Palace made it clear that Camilla would be known simply as Queen Camilla, in line with King Charles's wishes. But privately, whispers suggested that Anne was uncomfortable with this, not necessarily because of any personal jealousy, but because of what it meant, a break from the caution and restraint her mother embodied. To Anne, titles matter. Hierarchy matters. She grew up in a system built on protocol and public service, not popularity. She didn't complain when she wasn't given the title of Princess Royal until decades into adulthood, when she was 36 in 1987. She never made noise about her place in the line of succession. But she noticed everything, and the idea that Camilla's journey, full of media controversies and personal drama, could now end up in her being simply Queen, appeared to stretch Anne's sense of fairness and tradition. It wasn't just the title either. After Queen Elizabeth's death, Camilla's visibility increased dramatically. She began accompanying King Charles more regularly, hosting her own receptions, and representing the crown in a more active role. The public warmed to her, particularly because of her more relaxed and relatable style. But insiders claimed Anne quietly held her ground, maintaining a clear distance between her own brand of quiet, structured service and Camilla's softer, more approachable tone. Their schedules, while both busy, were different in style. Camilla leaned into literary patronages, domestic violence advocacy, and mental health support. All meaningful, but also very modern. Anne stuck to military units, agriculture, sports, and charity visits across the UK and abroad, often without fanfare. She didn't need press attention. She didn't seek it. And perhaps that was part of the silent divide. Anne had stood beside Queen Elizabeth at countless key moments and never strayed from duty. So watching Camilla ascend so visibly after the Queen's death, especially without the consort qualifier, was something Anne may have found hard to endorse. This was not out of malice, but out of loyalty to the crown as she knew it. That's not all. Keep watching. The coronation's hidden story. At the coronation of King Charles III in May 2023,
the ensign of kingly power and justice.
The world's attention was focused on the grand ceremony, the dazzling crowns, and the solemn oaths. But behind the royal pageantry, eagle-eyed viewers and royal watchers were just as focused on the subtle movements between key members of the royal family, especially between Princess Anne and Queen Camilla. Anne was given the historic role of gold stick-in-waiting, a ceremonial position dating back to the 15th century. Traditionally, it involved protecting the monarch at major events. On Coronation Day, it meant leading the procession behind the king and riding on horseback in full military regalia. It was a striking image. Anne, proud and composed, wearing her blues and royals uniform and feathered bicorn hat. She looked every inch the dedicated royal, quietly commanding attention without saying a word. At first glance, the appointment seemed like a genuine nod to Anne's service and seniority within the family. She had been loyal to the crown her entire life, was widely respected for her commitment, and had always been her brother's trusted ally in the background. But behind the symbolism, some insiders hinted at another angle. There were whispers that this prestigious duty came with another strategic purpose. It neatly avoided seating her near Camilla during the ceremony inside Westminster Abbey. Unlike other senior royals who were seated in the congregation, Anne remained outside in a central, high-profile role, only joining the others later. This shift in positioning, though explained by tradition, allowed organizers to keep the two women apart at a time when public scrutiny was at its peak. Those familiar with royal events know that nothing in these ceremonies is random. Seating plans, processional orders, even camera angles are carefully arranged. It's not unusual for courtiers to consider personality clashes or potential awkwardness when arranging who sits where. And given the long-rumored tension between Anne and Camilla, some believed this separation was intentionally designed to maintain a peaceful visual tone for the cameras and avoid any visible signs of discomfort or coldness between the two women. Adding to the theory was the fact that Anne, despite her key role, was later seen seated several rows behind Camilla during the ceremony. Some found it odd that the king's only sister, who had just led the procession, was not placed closer to the front. It sparked conversation online, with royal watchers questioning whether this was another diplomatic move to subtly manage dynamics without drawing direct attention to them. It didn't help that body language, experts noticed moments of stiffness in Anne's look as she stood with the other royals after the event. While she remained composed, her expressions were serious, and her interactions with Camilla were noticeably little. There were no warm glances exchanged, no friendly side conversations as cameras panned across the family. It felt formal. Though the palace offered no comment on these issues, but no doubts, Anne agreed to the arrangement without resistance. She understood the optics and would never cause a public fuss. But beneath the surface, it was hard to ignore that her presence had been carefully managed. In the end, Anne did what she always does. She fulfilled her duty with dignity. But the coronation, meant to unify the monarchy under a new reign, also highlighted the lingering spaces between key figures. And while Anne's ceremonial role made her a standout on that historic day, her physical distance from Camilla may have spoken volumes. What do you think really happened between Princess Anne and Queen Camilla? Was this a simple misunderstanding or something deeper? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear them. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the following video shown on your screen. You will enjoy it.